There comes a moment not always marked by trumpets or triumph, but often by a quiet ache, a subtle discontent when the soul whispers, there must be more than this. And in that sacred whisper lies the seed of awakening, not the awakening of gaining something new, but of seeing with new eyes. A shift so gentle it might be missed, and yet so profound it realigns the cosmos itself. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at begin to change, not because they morph or rearrange, but because your perception, that sacred lens of consciousness, becomes clear. The veil lifts, the illusion trembles, and what once seemed ordinary becomes miraculous. A blade of grass, once trampled under hurried feet, now becomes a miracle of divine geometry. The stranger who irritated you yesterday reveals the mirror of your own impatience. A challenge you cursed becomes the doorway through which your spirit walks free. Everything changes because you have changed, or rather you have remembered what is real. The outer world is nothing more than a canvas onto which your inner state is projected. Like a painter spilling the colors of their being across an empty space, so do you cast your beliefs, your fears, your hopes, and your truths onto life itself. And life, ever obedient, reflects it all back to you, not as punishment, not as reward, but as revelation. If you see the world as hostile, you will find proof in every glance, every word, every delay. But when your inner gaze turns toward peace, even chaos becomes your teacher. Even heartbreak becomes a holy thing. The Tao Te Ching speaks of the way that cannot be spoken, the truth that cannot be named. And yet, when your heart becomes still and your thoughts no longer demand understanding, the truth begins to speak through everything. The rustling of leaves becomes scripture. The wind becomes prophecy. The silence between words becomes your guide. Change, then, is not something that begins outside of you. It is not triggered by a new job or a new partner or a change in circumstance. True change is an inward blooming. A shift not in what you see, but in how you see. And that vision begins when you stop identifying with the voice of fear, the voice that insists you are not enough, not ready, not worthy, and begin to listen instead to the still, small whisper of your soul. The whisper that says you are already whole, that nothing outside of you can define you, limit you, or complete you. You are already the light you seek. You are already the love you chase. You are already the peace you long for. The ego resists this truth, for it survives on striving. It feeds on comparison, on drama, on control. It says, I will be happy when, and drags you through 1,000 unmet conditions. But the soul has no such requirements. It simply says, I am. And when you live from that I am, the universe responds. Not as an external force, but as a mirror to your own essence. The people you meet shift. The opportunities that eluded you appear. The timing aligns, not because the outer world changed, but because you remembered your true place within it. You see, the universe does not need to be fixed. It needs to be seen rightly. It is not your enemy. It is your echo. And every judgment you cast onto it is a reflection of a wound within you still waiting for love. Every complaint you utter is a prayer in disguise, a call for alignment. Every fear is a guidepost pointing not to danger, but to a threshold your soul is ready to cross. So when the world feels heavy, do not ask, why is this happening to me? Ask instead, what part of me is being invited to see differently? Because the moment you choose a new perspective, you step into a new world. Jesus said, let thine eye be single, and thy whole body shall be full of light. This is not about the physical eye, but the inner vision, the consciousness that beholds the sacred in all things. When that inner eye awakens, light floods every corner of your life. Not because the shadows vanish, but because you no longer fear them. You see through them. You recognize them as lessons, not punishments, as aspects of yourself you are now ready to embrace. And so the question is never, what must I change in the world, but what must I change in myself to see the world rightly? When you choose to see with love, the universe becomes love. When you choose to see with trust, life becomes trustworthy. When you choose to see with gratitude, everything, even the storm, becomes a gift. This is not magic. This is alignment. This is the sacred law of perception. What you look for, you find. What you expect, you receive. What you honor expands. And so if you feel lost, confused, unworthy, do not change your circumstances. Change your gaze. Look not through the eyes of your wounds, but through the eyes of your soul. See not with fear, but with forgiveness, with compassion, with the certainty that the divine is always present, even in the disguise of difficulty. The moment you choose to bless your life instead of curse it, your life begins to bless you in return. The moment you stop resisting what is and open your heart to what could be, the universe flows into your openness. The stars don't rush to shine, the trees don't question the seasons, and the ocean does not try to hold its waves still. So why must you strive? Why must you grip so tightly when you were made to trust? You are not a mistake. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are a sacred thread in the vast tapestry of life, and everything that has unfolded, every heartbreak, every delay, every moment of doubt has been a part of your awakening. Not one moment was wasted. Not one tear was in vain. It was all preparing you to see not just the world, but yourself more clearly. And when you see yourself clearly, without the fog of judgment, without the mask of ego, you begin to walk differently, speak differently. You begin to radiate not because you are trying to shine, but because you are no longer hiding your light. And the world feels this. It responds to this. For the universe is not fixed, it is fluid, it is not distant, it is intimate. It listens not to your words, but to your vibration. And when your vibration shifts, your reality shifts with it. So I invite you now not to strive, but to see. Not to chase, but to choose. Choose to see differently. Choose to see with the eyes of love, of wholeness, of truth. Because when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at, relationships, challenges, even your own reflection begin to change in kind. Not because the world bowed to your will, but because you bowed to the deeper truth within you. The truth that says you are enough. The truth that says all is unfolding in divine timing. The truth that says you are already free, you just haven't opened the door. The door, dear soul, is perception, and you hold the key. The key was never lost, only overlooked in the noise of wanting, striving, and forgetting. You have carried it with you through every season of doubt, every long night of questioning, every step taken with trembling faith. It is not made of metal or memory, but of awareness. And the lock it opens is not in the world, it is in your own perception. When you begin to truly see, not through the lens of what was or what should be, but through the sacred clarity of what is, you enter into holy territory. Here you find that the things you feared were not enemies, but misunderstood teachers. The people who hurt you were not punishments, but mirrors. And the pain you avoided so long was not your undoing, it was your threshold of becoming. You are not here to accumulate experiences like trophies or arrange your life into a gallery of achievements. You are here to awaken. And awakening does not always come with joy. It often arrives disguised as loss, as uncertainty, as surrender. Because it is not adding to you, it is undoing all that is not you. It strips away the layers of roles and titles, the illusion of control, the brittle identity built on how others see you, until all that remains is what is eternal, and that is love. Not a feeling, not an attachment, but the boundless essence of who you are when the masks fall away and the silence becomes your truest companion. You begin to see the divine not as something to reach for, but as something that breathes through you. Not as a far-off deity, but as the breath in your lungs, the rhythm in your chest, the quiet knowing in your bones. You are not walking toward God, you are walking as God. Not in arrogance, but in humble awe of the presence that lives through you, as you, for you. And from this remembrance, compassion flows effortlessly. You stop seeing others as obstacles or threats. You stop needing to be right, to win, to defend your ground. You begin to see that every soul is on their own sacred path, some walking with eyes open, some still sleeping, some stumbling, all searching for the same light that you are rediscovering now. It is no longer about who is ahead or behind. It is no longer about comparison, which is the language of ego. It is about communion, sharing the same sky, the same source, the same sacred breath. And so, when a stranger crosses your path, you don't ask, what do they want from me? You ask, what is the lesson here? What is the love trying to express itself through this moment? Even if the moment is uncomfortable, especially then, because discomfort is not a punishment, it is a sacred invitation to rise. Rise above the instinct to retreat. Rise above the old reaction. Rise into the presence of your truest self, which never needs to prove, never needs to grasp, never needs to shout to be known. The self that simply is whole, present, aware. The self that knows the universe is not happening to you, but through you. You are not separate from the unfolding, you are its pulse. You are not lost in the current, you are the current. And the more you trust this, the more life becomes a sacred rhythm rather than a chaotic noise. You no longer pray to be delivered from your circumstances, you begin to thank them, because you see now that every closed door redirected you toward a more sacred path. Every delay softened your ego. Every disappointment hollowed out the space where truth could take root. This is the holy paradox. What you once resented, you now revere, because your perception has changed, your vision has expanded, and the universe has shifted with it, because the universe reflects your state of being. Nothing has to change for everything to change, only your way of seeing. So breathe deeply, not to calm yourself, but to remember yourself. Each breath is a bridge back to the now. Each breath is a yes to this moment as it island. No longer fighting, no longer rushing, no longer searching, just seeing, just allowing, just being. And in this being, you become a beacon not by effort, but by essence. You do not need to light the path for others. You need only walk yours with such integrity, such presence, such quiet radiance, that others remember their own light simply by being near you. This is how the universe changes, not with force, but with truth. Not with noise, but with stillness. Not with conquest, but with remembrance. And you are the remembering. You are the remembering of a world that once knew only peace. A soul that has wandered long through the illusion of separation and now stands at the edge of a great return. Return not to a place, but to a knowing. A knowing that was never lost, only buried beneath the rubble of roles and routines, beneath the need to be more, to do more, to earn what was always yours. This is the quiet revolution of consciousness. Not a battle, not a crusade, but a soft dissolving of illusions. It is the moment when you look upon the world not with eyes clouded by fear, but with the clear gaze of love, and in that gaze, mountains move. In that gaze, wounds begin to close, not because time has passed, but because truth has arrived. Do you see it now? That you were never broken, that your cracks were not flaws, but fault lines through which the light could enter? That what you called your mistakes were simply the soul's way of learning how to walk again, not toward worth, but within it. You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be present. And presence is the language of the divine. The universe doesn't require you to have it all figured out. It only asks you to be here, fully, openly, honestly, to feel deeply, to see clearly, to choose wisely. And wisdom does not come from knowing everything, it comes from seeing with the heart. And when you begin to see with your heart, you stop needing the approval of the world. You stop seeking the applause of the temporary. You stop trading your truth for comfort, because you realize that real comfort comes from living aligned with your inner compass. The compass that always points you back to peace, even when the road is steep, that always draws you toward truth, even when truth dismantles everything false you've built. That always says this way, even when the ego says, but I don't understand. You don't need to understand, you only need to trust. Understanding is a function of the mind. Trust is a function of the soul. And your soul remembers what your mind forgot, that everything is unfolding exactly as it must for you to awaken. Not to a better version of yourself, but to the eternal version that never left. The version that existed before you were named, before you were wounded, before you began to believe you were something to fix. And now you return. Return to simplicity, to stillness, to the sacred space where nothing is missing and everything is possible. Return to the deep inner silence that holds all answers, not in words, but in presence, because truth doesn't shout, it waits. And now you are ready to hear it. The universe in its infinite compassion has been waiting too, not impatiently, not with judgment, but with open arms and open sky, ready to reflect back to you the light you've always carried. There is nothing to earn. There is nothing to prove. There is only the great allowing, the surrender of resistance, the exhale after lifetimes of holding your breath. And when you exhale, the world exhales with you. Suddenly the colors become brighter. The days feel softer. The people you once feared now seem familiar. Because you are no longer projecting your pain onto the canvas of life, you are painting with love. And love does not distort. It reveals. This is not the love that binds or breaks or begs. This is the love that sees and frees. The love that exists not as a possession, but as a presence. The love that asks for nothing but your willingness to see differently. And when you love in this way, everything around you changes, not because you demanded it, but because you allowed it. You became the opening, you became the shift, you became the change you once waited for. The outer world may not immediately mirror your inner transformation, but your relationship to it will. And that is the only change that matters. Because when your perception shifts from fear to faith, from ego to essence, from doubt to divine certainty, the whole universe realigns around your truth. You become untouchable not in body but in spirit, unshaken not by controlling life but by no longer needing to, unstoppable not through effort but through clarity. And clarity is the birthplace of peace. Let that peace rise in you now, not as a concept but as a living presence. Let it fill your breath. Let it soften your eyes. Let it dissolve the armor you've worn so long you forgot it wasn't your skin. There is no battle left to fight, only love left to live. And the more you live it, the more the universe changes, not into something new, but into something true. Because the truth was always there, waiting for you to see. Waiting not impatiently, not urgently, but with the quiet confidence of eternity, the truth stood at the doorway of your awareness. It never pushed, never forced. It simply stood there, like the horizon waits for the sunrise, knowing the light will eventually come home. And now, beloved soul, the light is rising not from outside, but from within. Not because the world grew gentler, but because your vision grew deeper. You stopped asking life to change and began changing the eyes with which you see life. And in doing so, the miraculous began its subtle unfolding. This is not about chasing miracles. This is about recognizing that life itself is the miracle. The way your breath moves without instruction, the way your heart keeps rhythm while you sleep, the way the stars align above your small sacred life without needing your permission. You are woven into a cosmic symphony, and when you become still enough, you can hear the melody again. It was never gone. You were only listening to noise that wasn't yours. And now, you are remembering the sound of your own being, the silent music of existence, the hum of something vast and loving and infinitely intelligent that chose to express itself as you. You do not need to understand it fully. You only need to allow it. The way a tree does not analyze the rain, it simply receives. The way the ocean does not question the moon, it simply responds. You too are made for this harmony. And when you return to it, the universe no longer feels like a stranger. It becomes your reflection. Your life, with all its details and dramas, becomes not a problem to solve, but a canvas to paint upon. And your brush is your awareness. Your color is your intention. Your signature is the love you pour into every sacred moment. When you change the way you look at things, the universe changes not because you've manipulated its form, but because you've aligned with its truth. The truth that says you are not here to suffer. You are here to remember joy. Not the fleeting thrill of circumstance, but the deep, abiding joy of connection. Connection to your soul, to others, to the divine in all things. The clouds may still gather, the winds may still howl, but you no longer tremble, because you have become the sky. The weather of life passes through you, but does not define you. You are the vastness behind it all. In this space, clarity arises, not the clarity that needs proof, but the clarity that knows without needing to explain. You begin to live guided by intuition, not instruction, led by love, not fear, grounded in peace, not performance. And the world notices, not because you announce it, but because your presence has changed. You have become a sanctuary in motion, a silent lighthouse, a living reminder that it is possible to live in truth, to love without condition, to walk the earth without losing the sky within you. This is your power, not the power of control, but the power of alignment. Not the power to make things happen, but to let things unfold through you in divine timing and perfect peace. You are not lost, you are arriving. You are not broken, you are blooming. You are not empty, you are full of forgotten light. And as you remember this moment by sacred moment, the universe leans closer, breathes easier, smiles wider. Because one more soul has returned to their vision. One more pair of eyes sees not with judgment, but with wonder. One more heart beats not in fear, but in fullness. And in that fullness, the world is healed, not all at once, not in fire and thunder, but in the soft, steady rhythm of presence. You are that presence. Be it. Be it not someday, not when it's safe, not when all the questions have answers, but now, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this holy moment that asks for nothing but your presence. You do not need more time. You do not need more preparation. You need only the courage to stop hiding behind your thoughts and step into the radiance of your being. The thoughts will still come, but you will no longer bow to them. They are visitors, not rulers. Clouds, not sky. Noise, not song. And once you recognize them as such, you no longer drown in their tide. You watch them float by with compassion. Even the painful ones, even the ones that whisper, "You're not enough," because you now know the truth. You are not your thoughts. You are the witness. The vast, sacred space in which they rise and fall. And in that space, there is peace. Not a peace you create, but a peace you uncover. It was always there, beneath the noise, beneath the striving, beneath the ache. A peace not dependent on conditions, but born from knowing who you are before the world told you otherwise. Who you are is not a role, not a name, not a story. You are the presence that lives before thought, the awareness that holds both joy and sorrow without being either. You are the observer, the knower, the stillness behind the movement. And from that stillness, wisdom flows not as information, but as clarity, not as certainty, but as trust. Trust that you are guided. Trust that you are enough. Trust that even in your unknowing, something deeper knows. You don't need to control the unfolding. You only need to stay present to it. And presence is not passive. It is the most courageous act of all. To remain here with open hands and an undefended heart when everything in you wants to run, to fix, to grasp, that is presence. That is power. It is not about never falling again. It is about no longer pretending the fall is failure. Because now you know that even in the fall, grace is present. Even in the wound, healing is already underway. Even in the mess, the masterpiece is being formed. You stop resisting what is, not because you are weak, but because you finally see that resistance was the source of your suffering, not the circumstance itself. You see that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, and that the option lies in how you choose to see. So you choose differently. You choose to bless rather than blame, to forgive rather than fight, to stay open rather than shut down. And in that choice, the world softens. It doesn't change because you forced it. It changes because you stop fighting it. You begin to notice the subtle miracles, the way a child laughs, unburdened by the world, the way your breath returns to you, even after grief, the way love still finds a way again and again, even through the cracks. This is what changes the universe. Not your effort, but your surrender. Not your striving, but your stillness. Not your dominance, but your devotion to truth. And truth is always simple, always kind, always whole. It does not demand, it invites. It does not shame, it frees. It does not rush, it waits. And now that you've slowed down, now that you've remembered, now that you've begun to see, not with the eyes of fear, but with the soul's gentle vision, everything looks different. Not because the world transformed, but because you did. You have become the transformation. And so it is here, in this sacred stillness you've discovered within, that the journey folds into itself, not ending, but expanding beyond the need for a destination. You have not arrived at a place, but at a presence. And this presence, this radiant aliveness that asks nothing but your yes, is what you've been searching for all along. Not another achievement, not another identity, not another moment to prove your worth, but this soft, quiet, holy recognition that you are and always have been enough. You are no longer chasing the light because you've become the light. You are no longer seeking love because you've remembered it is your very nature. You are no longer pleading with the universe to show you a sign because your very existence has become the sign. A living, breathing answer to a question only the soul knew how to ask. This is the great reversal. The sacred turning of perception where you realize the treasure was never buried in the distance. It was hidden in plain sight, waiting to be seen through awakened eyes. Eyes that now look with compassion instead of critique, with presence instead of expectation, with reverence instead of resistance. Nothing needs to be added, nothing needs to be earned, nothing needs to be fought for. The fight is over. The performance is over. The pretending is over. And what remains is truth, pure, unshakable, ever present. The truth that you are not here to be someone else. You are here to be entirely, unapologetically yourself. The divine expression of life made manifest in this body, in this breath, in this moment. Not because you have mastered anything, but because you have surrendered everything that blocked your natural radiance. And now you walk differently. not with the stiffness of armor, but with the grace of knowing. Now your words soften, not because you lack conviction, but because love has become your language. Now your silence deepens, because you no longer fear the quiet you've made it your home. You begin to bless every moment, not because it is easy, but because it is sacred. Even the pain, even the confusion, even the unknown. You bless them not because they are pleasant, but because they are portals, invitations, teachers dressed in the garments of discomfort. And so you meet them all with open hands and an open heart, not needing to understand them, just willing to be with them, trusting that nothing enters your life without purpose, that everything, when seen rightly, is working for your awakening. When you change the way you looked at things, the universe didn't just change, it remembered its beauty, its rhythm, its tenderness, its infinite reflection of the divine through the mirror of your perception. And as you walk forward now still, grounded alive, know this: you carry the entire cosmos within you. The stars move with you. The wind bends to your openness. The world heals by your presence. You are not alone and never have been. You are not lost and never were. You are not waiting to begin. You are already becoming what you've always been. And this is the final breath of forgetting and the first full inhale of truth. You are home, here, now, forever. There is a stillness older than time, resting at the center of your being. It is not moved by appearances, nor swayed by the tides of circumstance. It has watched every joy you've ever felt, every sorrow, every thought, as they rose and fell like waves across an eternal ocean, and yet it remained unmoved, not indifferent, but infinite. That stillness is you. Not the you with a name, not the you with a past, not the you who fears or longs or strives, but the one who sees, the one who watches, the silent witness, the timeless observer. We have been trained to identify with the experience as if we are only the dancer and not also the floor beneath our feet, the music in the air and the one watching from the balcony. We mistake our roles for our reality, our emotions for our essence. But you are not the passing moment. You are that which perceives the moment. You are not the character on the stage. You are the space in which the entire theater arises. When you begin to live as the observer, life ceases to be something that happens to you. It becomes something that arises within you. You are no longer tossed in the current. You become the riverbed itself, grounding the waters as they move. And suddenly, nothing is personal. Nothing is lost. Even pain becomes sacred because you are not inside the storm. You are the sky that holds it. Can you see this? Can you feel the vastness within you? The one who watches your thoughts is not your thoughts. The one who sees your fear is not afraid. The one who feels your sorrow is not broken. It merely observes, lovingly, patiently, endlessly. The Tao Te Ching says, the great Tao flows everywhere. All things are born from it, yet it does not create them. That is the way of the observer. It allows all things. It holds all things. But it clings to nothing. We live in a culture addicted to motion. Do more, say more, prove more, but your power is not in your doing. It is in your being. The observer does not need to fix what it sees. It simply sees with clarity, and that clarity, that presence becomes the healing itself. Think of the sun. It does not chase shadows. It does not fight the night. It simply shines. And in its presence, all that is false disappears. You are that Sunday. You are the light that reveals, not through judgment, but through being. Even the darkest fear dissolves in your awareness when you do not feed it with identity. Your thoughts are not you. They are events, like birds passing through the sky, like weather shifting across the landscape. You are the sky. You are the awareness in which all events rise and fall. And when you root yourself in that awareness, the world changes, not because the world changed, but because your seeing has changed. This is not detachment. This is deeper presence. Detachment is resistance. Observation is love. To observe without agenda, to witness without defense, is the highest form of compassion. When you look at yourself, your story, your patterns, your longings with this gentle gaze, something miraculous occurs. You stop identifying with the wound and begin to see the wisdom it contains. You stop clinging to the outcome and start flowing with the truth. Jesus said, be in the world, but not of it. This is the path of the observer. It is not withdrawal from life. It is the most profound engagement with it. When you stop being consumed by your story, you begin to participate from your soul. Your actions become extensions of awareness, not reactions of fear. Imagine standing in a forest watching the wind move through the trees. You do not rush to stop it. You do not judge the leaves that fall or the branches that sway. You simply behold. That is how the soul sees life, not as a problem to solve, but as a dance to witness. You are not here to conquer life. You are here to see it, to know it, to feel it without being lost in it. The ego says, I am what I do, what I have, what others think of me, but the observer says, I am. That is enough. That is everything. You don't have to earn peace. You only have to stop resisting the present. You don't have to chase truth. You only have to become quiet enough to hear it. It is not hidden. It is not far. It is behind every breath, inside every pause, beneath every emotion. The observer is never absent. It is only forgotten. When you awaken as the observer, you no longer say, I am sad. You say, sadness is arising. You no longer say, I am angry. You say, anger is moving through me. And in that subtle shift of language, you reclaim your freedom. You stop being defined by your experiences and you begin to define them by how you hold them, how you bless them, how you allow them to pass. Rumi wrote, try to be a sheet of paper with nothing on it. Be a spot of ground where nothing is growing, where something might be planted. A seed, possibly, from the absolute. The observer is that sacred ground. Empty, open, fertile, ready to receive. Unattached to what comes or goes. You are the canvas, not the paint. You are the silence, not the noise. You are the eternal witness, not the fleeting form. And the more you live from this knowing, the lighter life becomes. You stop trying to hold the world together. You let it unfold, and you watch, and you trust. Trust that there is a rhythm to all things, a harmony that does not need your control, only your awareness. Every heartbeat, every sunrise, every death and birth, they all arise within the same field of consciousness. You are that field. You are not in the universe is in you. You do not have to strive to become whole. You already are. You do not have to fix your soul. It is untouched. What you call healing is not the mending of a broken self. It is the unveiling of the unbroken witness. Even in suffering, the observer remains. Even in confusion, the observer sees clearly. Even in death, the observer is eternal. That is who you are. Not what happens to you, but that which can never be harmed. And so I invite you, gently but urgently, to return. Return to the seat of awareness. Not tomorrow, not when you've read more or done more or healed more. Now, in this breath, in this silence, close your eyes and feel the one who sees. Without effort, without thought, just presence. That is home, that is truth, that is you. You are the observer of the universe, not just a participant. You are the mirror in which stars behold themselves. You are the stillness in which time forgets its name. And in this knowing, may you walk the world not as a seeker, but as one who remembers. Not with answers, but with presence. Not with noise, but with depth. Not with fear, but with light. You are not here to react. You are here to see. And in that seeing, everything transforms. There is a sacred intelligence that guides the tides, unfurls the petals of a rose without resistance, and carves canyons with the mere flow of water. That same intelligence animates you. It breathes you without your command. It dreams through you even as you sleep. And yet, we so often forget we become hypnotized by the noise, entranced by the forms, pulled into the drama of the stage, forgetting that we are not merely players, but the vastness in which the entire play is witnessed. When you live as the observer, you become rooted in the eternal while still walking in the temporary. You do not deny your humanity, you sanctify it. You do not escape the moment you illuminate it from within. You begin to see that the experiences you once called problems were not obstacles, but invitations, each a whisper from the universe asking, will you awaken now? And if you listen closely, there is no pain that does not come bearing a gift. There is no loss that does not reveal a deeper presence. Even your tears, especially your tears, water the soil of your becoming. They remind you that your soul is still alive beneath the armor. The observer allows them to fall, not as weakness, but as sacred rain, returning you to your source. Imagine now that your life is not a task to be completed, but a masterpiece already in progress. You do not need to rush to the end. The artist does not panic to finish the painting. The joy is in the creating. The sculptor does not mourn the block of marble, he rejoices, knowing what lives within it. You are both the artist and the art. The observer is the part of you that knows the chisel is not destruction, it is revelation. The old identities, the false layers, the masks, they fall away not because you hate them, but because you outgrow them. You begin to see that clinging to them is like clutching smoke. They were never who you were, only who you thought you needed to be. The moment you stop defending them, your soul can finally breathe again. And in that breath, the light of who you truly are begins to shine. It is not a loud light. It does not demand to be seen. It does not compete or compare. It is soft, like the glow of dawn. It is the kind of light that transforms simply by being. It blesses without intention. It heals without effort, because it comes from a place beyond the ego, a place where you are not trying to be anything, but simply allowing all that you are to be seen without resistance, without shame. This is the way of the observer, quiet, humble, free. And as you dwell more deeply in this space, you begin to notice something strange and beautiful. The world does not seem as threatening. The judgments that once stung lose their power. The need to defend, to prove, to posture it dissolves. Not because you don't care, but because you now see from a different altitude. You've risen above the storm. Not in arrogance, but in clarity. You begin to feel compassion not just for others, but for yourself. You see the times you forgot your light, and you forgive. You see the moments you lashed out, the fears you obeyed, the love you withheld, not with shame, but with understanding. The observer does not punish. It recognizes, it accepts, and in that acceptance, it liberates. This is the gentle revolution of awakening. Nothing outside you needs to change for peace to arise. It is not in changing the world, but in changing how you see the world that transformation takes root. And seeing as the observer is the highest form of vision, it is clear, unclouded, anchored in truth. The great mystics have spoken of this place. They've called it the kingdom within, the uncarved block, the still point in a turning world. And you have touched it too, perhaps in a moment of silence, in the pause between heartbeats, in the breath that caught your soul in wonder. It is not new, it is eternal. And it is calling you now, not with urgency, but with unwavering love. You do not need to understand it with the mind, you only need to experience it. Let yourself become empty enough to feel it. Let go of the arguments, the conclusions, the need to be right, the need to be understood. The observer has no need for such things, for it knows what cannot be spoken. So become the silence, become the presence, become the one who watches, not to judge, not to control, but simply to love more deeply. And as you live from this place, life will no longer be a struggle against the current. It will become a communion with it. You will not swim upstream, you will float, trust, surrender. And in that surrender, you will discover the deepest paradox of all. The less you try to control, the more you are carried exactly where you need to be. Because life is not against you. It is not testing you. It is reflecting you. And when the reflection is clear, when your seeing is pure, when your heart is open, the entire world becomes your teacher. Every leaf becomes a scripture. Every breath becomes a prayer. Every moment becomes an opportunity to remember you are not the experience. You are the one who sees it. You are the observer of the universe. And that, beloved soul, is your true power. In the sacred stillness of your awareness, you begin to feel something ancient awakening, not a memory, but a knowing. It does not come from the mind, it rises from beneath it. It is the recognition that you were never truly bound by the stories you've lived, the identities you've worn, or the pain you've carried. You were the presence that allowed them all to unfold. You were the space through which the river of life moved, not the debris it carried. And once this knowing takes root, even the most ingrained fear begins to lose its grip. Because how can fear control the one who sees it as passing weather? How can shame define the one who watches without flinching? You stop being entangled in the stories of the world and you begin to walk above them, not detached, but elevated, not better, but clearer. There is a quiet nobility in those who live from this place. They speak softly, but their presence echoes. They do not need to win arguments because they are not lost in the noise of opposition. They do not need to defend their truth because their truth is not an idea, it is a state of being. They do not preach, they radiate, they do not convert, they invite. They are not pulled by appearances, they rest in essence. And so you begin to listen differently, not just with your ears, but with your soul. You listen to the silence beneath the words. You listen to the emotion beneath the posture. You listen not to respond, but to understand. And in that listening, you become a sanctuary, not just for others, but for yourself. You become the safe place you've always longed for. Not because life stopped hurting, but because you stopped abandoning yourself when it did. This is the ultimate return, not to an idea, but to your own sacred center. The space within you that does not flinch when the world shakes. The space that watches the storm, not from fear, but from reverence. That watches joy, not from clinging, but from awe. That watches change, not as loss, but as the dance of form within the field of the formless. You see, when you live as the observer, you do not deny emotion, you give it space to be. You do not suppress the waves, you recognize that they cannot touch the ocean floor. You are that floor, unshakable, steady, silent. And because of that, you can hold the waves with compassion instead of resistance. You can feel without drowning. You can experience without becoming. This is the great spiritual art, not to escape life, but to embrace it without identification, to move through the world as a clear mirror, reflecting truth without distortion, to love with fullness but without possession, to serve with humility but without the hunger for approval, to walk with purpose but without the weight of needing to prove your worth. You already are. You always have been. Your worth is not an equation. It is a constant. It is the light that cannot be increased by praise or diminished by criticism. And once you know this, not as a concept, but as a lived reality, you become immovable in the most graceful way. You no longer reach for fleeting highs, because the highest joy is presence. You no longer avoid the lows, because even pain becomes a portal to deeper awareness. You no longer seek outside, because everything you were searching for was hidden in plain sight in the silent witness that's been with you through every breath, every tear, every heartbeat. The observer is not outside of you. It is not a skill to master. It is your original nature, the one you had before you were named, before you were shamed. Before you were shaped into what the world needed you to be, it is the you that watched it all unfold without ever being diminished by it. And now it is time to return. Return not with regret, but with reverence. Return not as a seeker, but as the light returning to itself. Return not to escape the world, but to finally see it clearly from the place within you that is untouched by its noise. Because the most powerful being in the universe is not the one who controls all things. It is the one who sees all things and remains at peace. You are not here to control life. You are here to remember that you are life. And when you do, the need to strive dissolves. The need to be seen vanishes. The need to hold on loosens. And all that remains is what was always there. Presence, clarity, peace, and a quiet joy that no circumstance can touch. Then we walk further now, deeper into the garden of your soul, where no footsteps have echoed in years, where the wind carries ancient songs your mind has forgotten, but your being still remembers. You begin to recognize that most of your life has not been lived, it has been reacted to. And yet, beneath every reaction, behind every grasping thought, there was always a silent choice waiting to be made. The choice not to cling, but to notice. Not to resist, but to breathe. Not to fear the fire, but to sit beside it and feel its warmth without leaping into its flames. As the observer, you do not suppress the fire, you learn its language. You no longer shout over your pain, you bow your head and listen to its wisdom. For there is a holiness in discomfort that the ego will never understand. Only the soul knows that wounds are not punishments, they are portals. They tear through illusion, not to harm, but to reveal what was too sacred to be seen before. And it is here, in this quiet recognition, that the layers begin to shed, not by force, but by grace. You do not need to strip them away. You need only to stand still and let the false identities melt in the warmth of your presence. The one who is watching has no need for masks. The one who is aware has no interest in defending what is not true. In this way, even solitude becomes sacred, no longer a space of lack, but of communion. You begin to see that loneliness was never the absence of others, it was the absence of your own attention. But now, with your awareness anchored, the room fills with light. You become your own company, and it is enough, more than enough. It is beautiful. From this stillness, love flows not as an emotion, but as an essence. It does not depend on closeness or agreement. It radiates. It expands through you and touches even those you will never meet. For the observer is not confined by distance. It sees the interconnected thread of all things. It knows that the joy you awaken in your heart today will ripple outward, reaching someone across oceans, across time, across lives. You are not bound by your body. You are not limited to your name. These are temporary vessels for the eternal awareness that you are. And once you begin to feel this, not believe it, but feel it, a kind of quiet awe arises. The kind of awe that makes the sky seem closer and your breath feel like a prayer. Time begins to lose its grip. You stop measuring life by clocks and calendars. Instead, you measure by presence, by how deeply you inhabit the moment, by how open your heart is when you hold the gaze of a stranger, by how silently you can sit and still feel whole. This is not escapism. This is deeper embodiment. You are no longer acting from the surface. You are living from the depths. And in the depths, all labels fall away. There is no man or woman, no success or failure, no right or wrong. There is only the unfolding. And you, the observer, are not here to judge the unfolding. You are here to bear witness to its beauty. The river does not argue with the rock. It flows around it. The sky does not mourn the falling of leaves. It holds them in their descent. In the same way, the awakened observer does not resist what comes, it allows. It does not cling to what goes, it blesses. And in this allowing, in this soft surrender, life opens itself in ways the mind could never plan. What you once called miracles become natural. What once felt impossible becomes inevitable, not because the external changed, but because you have ceased to block the flow of what was always meant for you. Your only task now is to stay open, to remain soft, to stay with the breath, the body, the moment, to listen to the silence beneath the surface of things. And as you do, the most tender truth begins to reveal itself, not as a lightning bolt, but as a whisper. It tells you that you are not here to fix the world. You are here to love it more clearly. You are not here to escape the illusion. You are here to see through it, with eyes that do not judge and a heart that does not close. For the observer has no agenda, only awareness, no expectation, only presence. And in this presence, even the hardest truths become bearable. Even the deepest grief becomes sacred. Even death itself becomes not an ending, but a transformation, a movement from form back into essence. This is the rhythm of all life. Appear, dissolve, return, arise, release, begin again. And through it all, you remain not as the character, but as the screen. Not as the wind, but as the space it moves through, untouched, unchanged, eternal. There comes a point in this sacred remembering where you no longer ask, why is this happening to me? The question dissolves not because you found the answer, but because you no longer need one. The observer does not seek explanation, it rests in observation. It watches the mountain rise from the plain, the storm gather on the horizon, and it does not panic. It trusts the design even when the mind does not understand the architect's hand. And slowly, the fear of not knowing begins to lift. You no longer scramble to fill the silence. You begin to sense that in the quiet there is a language far older than words, a wisdom that speaks not through instruction, but through vibration. Not through answers, but through alignment. And in this alignment, a deeper intelligence takes over, an intelligence that orchestrates galaxies without effort and heals the broken without rush. You are a part of that intelligence. You do not need to earn your place in it, you are born of it. Your worth is not a matter of debate, it is embedded in the atoms of your being. The same force that ignites the stars pulses through your veins. And once you truly feel this, not as an idea, but as a living reality, you begin to walk the earth differently. You walk slower. You breathe deeper. You look at a tree and see not bark and leaves, but a living sermon in stillness. You look into a stranger's eyes and feel not separation, but recognition. The observer in you sees the observer in them. The masks may differ, but the gaze is the same, timeless, boundless, divine. And in this gaze, the urge to judge begins to soften. You see that judgment was never a reflection of others, it was a veil over your own heart. But now, you no longer need to hold others at arm's length to feel safe. The observer needs no defenses. It sees clearly and loves anyway. This love, born of awareness, is not a feeling that comes and goes. It is not conditional on mood or merit. It is the default state of a being who no longer sees separation. It is the love of the sun for the flower, expecting nothing in return. It is the love of the wind through the reeds, playing a song and asking no applause. And when you live from this place, your very presence becomes healing, not because of what you say, but because of what you no longer resist. You stop projecting your shadows onto others and begin to reclaim them as lost children, ready to return home. You stop seeing conflict as something to win and begin to view it as a mirror asking you to remember what you've forgotten. The observer does not get lost in drama. It sees the wound beneath the rage, the fear behind the mask, the cry for connection beneath the attack. It holds space instead of taking space. It listens beyond the noise. And in that listening, healing happens not because it was forced, but because it was allowed. This is the alchemy of attention. When you stop reacting and start witnessing, everything begins to transform, not by effort, but by presence. The things you used to chase begin to arrive. The things you used to resist begin to dissolve. The world no longer feels like a battlefield, it becomes a temple. And in this temple, every experience becomes sacred. Every failure becomes a teacher. Every ending becomes a gate. There is nothing to escape, nothing to regret, nothing to fix. There is only the unfolding and the awareness that beholds it. The more you dwell in this state, the less you need from the world. Not because you have become indifferent, but because you have become whole. Wholeness does not beg, it blesses. It does not compete, it creates. It does not grasp, it gives. And so your life becomes a giving, not of effort, but of essence. Not a performance, but a presence. You no longer try to change the world with force, you change it with the stillness that moves through you like breath through a flute. This stillness, it is not an absence, it is a fullness that holds everything without clinging to anything. It is not passive, it is the most powerful state a human can enter. For in stillness, you are no longer the wave, you are the ocean remembering itself. And the ocean does not panic when the waves rise. It does not mourn when they fall. It's simply island deep, expansive, whole. So be the ocean. Be the one who sees. Be the presence in which all things rise and fall and remain unchanged. You are no longer standing outside yourself, peering in with judgment or longing. You have entered the temple of your own awareness, and it has welcomed you home without question. The path that once seemed far and winding was not a path at all. It was a spiral inward, circling not toward a destination, but toward a depth. And now that you have arrived, not somewhere new, but somewhere ancient within you, you remember there was never anything missing. Even the questions that drove you here, the ache to be understood, the hunger to belong, the need to find meaning, they dissolve like mist in morning light. Not because they were wrong, but because they have been fulfilled, not by answers, but by presence. And now you are that presence. The one who no longer rushes to speak because they have nothing to prove. The one who no longer hides in the noise because they are not afraid of their own silence. The one who no longer clings to form because they have fallen in love with the formless. And in this stillness, the world reveals itself anew. You see through the veil of appearances and begin to touch the fabric beneath all things. The joy of a child's laugh, the weight of another's sorrow, the light in the eyes of a stranger, they all carry the same essence now. Nothing is separate. Nothing is other. You have become the field in which all duality dissolves. And so you walk not away from the world but through it as one who no longer needs to grasp or resist. You walk like water moves, gentle, unstoppable, true. You bring peace not by speaking of it, but by being it. You become the eye of the storm, not untouched by life, but unshaken by it. You become trustworthy in the way rivers are, you carry things without holding them. You become generous in the way trees are, you give shade without asking who is worthy. You become luminous in the way stars are, not because you strive to shine, but because you've stopped dimming your light. This is the gift of the observer. You are no longer fused with the story, and so you are free to love the story, to live it fully, but not be consumed by it. And when you are no longer consumed by your own story, something sacred happens. You become a safe place for others to awaken. Not through teaching, but through presence. You look at them and do not see their masks or mistakes. You see their essence. You see what they have forgotten. And your gaze becomes a mirror, silently saying, you are already enough. You are already home. This is how the world is healed, not all at once, not through revolution, but through remembrance. One soul at a time, returning to the observer, returning to truth, returning to love. So now, let this be your vow, not to strive, not to improve, not to become someone else, but to remain. Remain with your breath, remain with your truth, remain in the stillness that sees, that accepts, that loves without condition. Remain as the one who watches not with detachment, but with divine compassion. And in your remaining life will unfold, not because you forced it, but because you no longer stood in its way. You are the observer of the universe, not merely a participant. You are the sky that holds every storm and every sunrise, the silent witness to all beginnings and all ends, the presence that cannot be burned, broken, or lost. And now you remember, now you rest, now you are free.